Hi, I'm Pete McConville and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, you might not know that over on the community tab on my homepage, I often ask you questions about stuff. How do you collect watches? What's important to you? What you don't like? Over the last couple of weeks, I ran a series of polls asking you how you use your watches, how you appreciate your watches. And now what I've done is some cheap content where I've gone back, gathered those up, and I'm going to show you how you use your watches according to you. So we'll start this with a really simple one, and at the start, you've picked up your watch, it's dead, you wind it, now you set it. What I was curious about is how accurate do you set your watch? How much attention do you pay to it? And what I found was this. 67% of you reckon that you can get it down to a second or less out by setting your watch to some really detailed, really precise external source. Well done, great on you. After that, it falls away really quickly. 22% of you reckon you can get it down to about a minute. And there's no percent, but it does look like one person, maybe, possibly two, actually did put their hand up to say sometimes they don't actually set it at all. Where do I fit? I'm definitely in the broadly right. I get it. I'm pretty confident I'm within a minute on most times I set it. I'm in with the 8%. Sticking with accuracy. So we've set the watch to within a minute or so. Within a second or so for 67% of you. Now it's a case of how tight are you? How precise are you in checking the ongoing accuracy of your watch? And what we saw was this. On average, 57% of you use something like your phone as an external reference just to visually check that your watch seems to be clocking over at the right times, hitting the right marks. 15% of you, a smaller number than I expected to be honest, use some kind of external instrument to check the accuracy of your watch at the detail level, something like a time grapher. 29% of you, more than I expected to be honest, really don't check the accuracy of your watch after you've set it up unless you think there's some kind of a problem. Where do I fit? I am definitely in that last camp. I do have a time grapher. I use it solely if I'm concerned that I've noticed something. Do I want to try and diagnose what that is? Looking less at the accuracy and more at things like beat rate and so forth. Moving away from strict accuracy now, looking at functionality, really simple question. If you've got a date function, do you use it and how carefully do you use it? Turns out 72% of you are really careful. Not only do you set the date always, but you make sure it changes over at the right time and everything. After that, it falls away fast. 14% of you saying just about always. Some of you, about 4% saying most of the time or sometimes. And a slightly bit of a kick at the end, 6% saying rarely, if ever. That last little kick at the end is where I am. I almost never set the date on my watches. Sticking with functionality, but getting away from the movement, I was curious, if your watch comes with some kind of timing bezel, do you use it? 1% of you use a diving watch bezel as intended and dive with it. And even then, I'm not sure I entirely trust that number. After that, we get, in fact, no, not really after that, we actually have a really nice bell curve. 42% of you fall right in the middle. Yeah, occasionally you'll use it to time something when it occurs to you, and we fall away on either side. I was a little taken aback by 17% of people not using the watch, not using a timing bezel at all. But then that kind of makes sense when you look at some of the later numbers. Where do I fit? I'm constantly using my timing bezel for all sorts of things. If I've got a watch with a timing bezel, at any point in the day, it is probably timing something. So far, all the questions have been about using the watch, its functionality, its complications, etc. Now let's jump completely sideways and talk about design aesthetics and looking at your watch. What I was curious about is how carefully do people look at their watch? In the same way as we might say use something external to our watch, like our phone, to check our accuracy, will people use something like a loop external to their own eyes, their own personal lived experience, to check how their watch looks? What we found was not quite the same as when we're checking accuracy and so forth. In this case, most people will rely purely upon their eyesight. 69% of you will say that you look very carefully at your watches, but you don't use anything external, no reading glasses, no 4x loops or anything like that. After that, we fall away. Again, it's a very nice little normal distribution here, with only about 8% of people at one end using something strong like a 10x loop or a macro lens, and 1% of people volunteering that they actually don't really look at their watches very carefully at all. Where do I fit? I'm in that 10x loop or macro lens area. Interesting cause and effect, is that because I run a YouTube channel and take photos, or is it the other way around? I run a YouTube channel and take photos of my watches because that's the kind of guy I am. I don't know. But I will say that the aesthetics, the design, the style of a watch is all important to me. I won't bother externally checking accuracy unless something is indicating there's a problem. But I don't need that trigger to go look at the detail of a watch. Okay, so moving back now to how we use our watches and what we're happy about with their function. Really simple question. What level of accuracy do we need to be happy about our watches? I broke it up into 5 pretty common standards: chronometer grade quartz, plain old everyday standard quartz, chronometer grade mechanical, good Swiss mechanical, and what I jokingly call just Seiko. Just kind of you get through the day without noticing it. What we got was a really interesting result. And I think it says as much about people's preference for mechanical as it does around the idea of ultimate accuracy. I believe that if you genuinely care about accuracy, if accurate timekeeping is what's important to you, you will always, only, and forever buy quartz. Buying mechanical is by definition not as accurate as quartz. Even you can buy a relatively inexpensive, and by that I mean probably $500 to $600 you can get chronometer grade quartz watches that will blow any mechanical watch ever made out of the park. So if you tell me that accuracy is the thing you desire in your watch because its purpose is to tell the time, I assume you only buy quartz. I don't think a lot of you think that way. I think a lot of you kind of make a mechanical and quartz decision first and then think about how accurate a watch needs to be. And so, whereas I think accuracy means you must go quartz, I think a lot of other people are seeming to go, I'll go mechanical, then once I've made that choice, it's all about accuracy. And that number really seems to come out here, where people overwhelmingly, unsurprisingly for my website, have chosen that they want mechanical watches. I mean, that constitutes 95% of the answer. And once you get to within that 95%, half of you, more than half of that group, want chronometer grade or better mechanical movements. After that, there's a bit of a dip. It's interesting. I was expecting more kind of a fall away, but no, after that, you kind of jump, and a quarter of people want standard Seiko accuracy, which is very definitely where I fit. I couldn't help myself. I had to have a bit of a play with the next question and really take exactly the same question as the last one, but instead of asking what level of accuracy do you need so that you're happy with your watch, rather, what level of accuracy do you need, otherwise other people are going to notice something is wrong with your behavior, that you're turning up late or turning up early. Where I fit is I'm very definitely with 53% of you in that you know what? As long as I'm within a minute a day or so, no one else is going to notice what's going on. I do not synchronize my watch with anyone, which really you would have to do for other people to notice that there was an accuracy problem with your watch, unless you're out by like minutes a day. I'm struggle to understand some of those other answers. Theoretically, that means 47% of you are synchronizing your watches to some incredible, for 4% of you, to an incredible level of accuracy. Okay, so the next question I had was around the idea of timing bezels. And more importantly, if you have used it, not just timing bezel, but like any kind of, maybe a second time zone, maybe the slide rule function on a Navitimer. Once you've used it, do you just leave it there or do you return it to zero? 89% of you responded with, of course you return it to zero, you are not a barbarian. That is astounding to me. I don't understand the need to do that, but I do recognize it. I recognize that which is kind of, it feeds into why so many people, I think, get so angry about things like Seiko and bezel alignment, because you're constantly trying to go back and redo that alignment. For me, you know what? I just leave it wherever the hell it was until the next time I use it, which is probably why the idea of alignment, bezel alignment on a Seiko, simply is a non-issue for me. I think I've owned watches for 5 or 6 years that I have never put the bezel back to zero again. And I'm not sure why I would, but obviously I'm one of only 7%. Next question, back to functionality, about power reserve, which has really been a bit of a battleground in a lot of movement updates over the last couple of years. But I was curious, for being such a battleground about where people are boasting about getting 80, 90, 100 hours of power reserve, how useful is it to you? And what we found was 52% of you, it's kind of useful. It's sort of nice to pick up a watch that's still running, but it's no big deal. And second to that, at 41%, was, frankly, it's not a big deal to you at all. You can rotate, you've got a larger collection of watches, you rotate them a bit, and you fully expect that they'll be dead when you come to pick them up. Only 7% of you said that having a longer power reserve is really a big deal to you, that you have built the way you use your watches, that you wind them around the idea that what their power reserve is and where that'll fit. Where do I fit? I'm definitely in the no, I don't care camp. In fact, I would go a little bit further. I use my watches so sparingly. I have a larger collection. I never wear a watch, or very, very rarely wear a watch more than one day, maybe in a week or two. And the idea that after I've finished wearing my watch, it continues to tick away actually kind of annoys me. I'd rather it just die quite quickly. The idea that it continues to accumulate negligible and utterly irrelevant wear that I will never care about. It won't make any difference to my servicing intervals. I know that, but it still bugs me. So I've actually found myself now looking at watches like that Oris with the 100 hours thinking, that's a bad thing. Why are you advertising that? But that's just me. Okay, my last question was odd, and it's about a dress watch, but frankly, the question wasn't inspired by a dress watch. I've got a JLC master compressor diver that doesn't have a running seconds. It's got an operating indicator, so it doesn't quite work the same way. But it's actually quite difficult to track the seconds on that. It's virtually impossible. And it got me thinking, if you guys had a traditional dress watch that didn't have a running seconds, just a two-hander, how would you track how accurate it was? Given that so many people had said before that you place great stock in accuracy, you like to set it very precisely, that sort of thing. And what we found was an interesting question about freedom from anxiety. because suddenly 64% of you, almost 2/3 of you, ticked up that you would enjoy the freedom of not having to care about precision anymore. And after that, we flowed away with actually 15% of you saying, silly question, what kind of sloth would live without a running seconds? And 8% of you, only 8% of you, saying, oh no, you'd still need to use a time grapher to know how accurate it was, despite the fact that you're not necessarily going to know in using the watch at all. It's just a thing you need to know. Out of that, I did start wondering, it'd be interesting to ask another question about, does having a watch that is very accurate make you happy? Or conversely, is it more about the idea that you've got a watch that's not accurate or may not be accurate, causes you anxiety? Those aren't the same thing. And it was only after asking these questions I began to wonder, is it really that people want accuracy because it makes them happy? Or is it that people fear inaccuracy, and all this obsession with inaccuracy is about avoiding something, not getting something? But that's getting way deeper than you're definitely able to get with these sorts of simple questions on Google homepages. So anyway, that's it. That's what you guys said about your watches and where I fit in. Love to have more comments. Some of these questions got the Power Reserve question got a lot of comments on the community tab. Love to hear more comments below. Please go for your life. Anyway, I've been Pete McConville. If you want more of this sort of stuff, like, subscribe, do all that sort of thing. I'll see you later.